The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash. Episode 16, The Hero of Oaton by That Guy Fex. Chapter 7, The Limits of a Hero. Screams punctuated the high, ear-splitting roar of the basilisk. The pony folk of Oaton glancing out the windows and doors to see the creature that was now boldly making its way down the center road that cut through town. Trixie was already scrambling out the guest room and heading for the stairs down. When she saw Bushel poking her head out the door, looking fearful, Trixie only paused long enough to say, "Close your door and stay inside until I or your parents come get you." She didn't wait for a response, but she heard the door close behind her. She almost tripped down the stairs, but was caught by Raindrops, who had been apparently flying up the stairs. The Pegasus steadied Trixie, helping her down the last few steps, where Cheerilee, Mayor Sheaf, and Piskaresque were waiting in the tavern common room. Piskaresque was looking fearfully toward the doors, then at her husband. "There, what are we going to do?" She's face was a stone mask. "You're going to get upstairs and stay with the foals. I'm going out there to try and get anypony with a pitchfork and torch to try and drive that thing off." "Bad idea," said Trixie. "Even if you did drive it away, you'd lose pony to its gaze." "What the use is this then, great and powerful Trixie?" asked Sheath. "I'll have to protect my village." Raindrops was frowning, flying over to the window and chancing a peek out. "Can't every pony just hunker down and wait for it to leave?" "I don't think that'll work," piped in Cheerilee, looking thoughtful, and the thoughts she was having weren't the warm, fuzzy kind. "What I read on Basilisk on the train ride says they're territorial, but not aggressive like this. If it's attacking, it won't stop until whatever is aggravating it goes away." There was a crashing from outside, so loud it made Trixie jump. This was followed by a roar, and the sound of ponies yelling. Raindrops was still out the window, and her eyes widened, mane and tail seeming to wilt in 1 second, then bristled the next as she growled, "It's trying to tear down one of the houses!" The Pegasus didn't even wait for a response. She went flying out the door, much to Trixie's immediate horror. "Raindrops! Wait! Blast it all!" Trixie began to gallop after her friend, Cheerilee and Sheaf close behind her. The night was crisp, with a faint chill wind starting to flit through the village. Trixie ignored the cold, ignored her aching legs, ignored the exhausting pressure in her head of an oncoming headache. None of that mattered. What mattered was that her friend was flying into danger. The village was in danger, and she had to do something about it. All of Oaton was wide awake at this point, as evidenced by the ponies who were either looking out the doors or even coming out into the street, some with farm tools at the ready. Trixie shouted to them as she galloped past, "Everybody back inside! No pony come out until it's over!" She didn't know if her words were having any effect, though. Many of the farm ponies who saw her go past were cheering her on and waving. Trixie almost snarled under her breath. Didn't they know how dangerous the situation was? To make matters worse, Sheath had started calling out for every able-bodied pony to arm themselves. Was he mad? Then again, she had to be pretty mad, too. It wasn't like she had any idea how she was going to stop the basilisk. Speaking of which, she saw it up ahead. Like Raindrops had said, it was busy tearing down the wall of one of Oaton's single-story houses. It was pitch black in the shadows of the night, the moon's silver light only dully reflecting off its scales, which were a dark, deep forest green that would have made it blend in perfectly in the thick undergrowth of the everfree. It had a somewhat alligator-like appearance. Its body and long scale covered affair, but its legs were larger and more muscled than any alligator should have been, tipped with 4 powerful claws. Its back was rigid, with thin, bony spines that went all the way to the crest of its head. A pointed snout held a 5-foot-wide jaw, lined with 4-inch needle-sharp teeth. Worst of all, though, were the basilisk's eyes, a fierce golden yellow, like the painful glare of the sun itself, slit down the middle with an inky black line. The beast had gouged a wide hole in the side of the house with its claws, and was sticking its snout inside. A mare's voice screamed, and Trixie heard the muffled wails of foals. She put on an extra burst of speed, already channeling magic through her horn. A few fireworks in its face might distract it. Raindrops seemed to appear from nowhere. Trixie had lost sight of the Pegasus once she'd gotten outside, but that was just because Raindrops had flown up at an angle and now dive-bombed the basilisk, smashing both forehooves into the side of the creature's head. Trixie had seen Raindrops crack rock with those hooves. The basilisk barely rocked under the blow and snorted, pulling its snout out of the house and shaking its head slightly. Raindrops seemed stunned. The basilisk began to look at her. Trixie felt her blood run cold as he pushed her magic through her horn faster. Brilliant green, violet, and blue bursts of light illuminated the night, right above the basilisk's head. Rather than fix Raindrops with its petrifying gaze, instead, it closed its eyes against the light and shook its head back and forth in confusion. "Raindrops! Get out of there!" Trixie shouted, scraping her own gallop to a halt. She didn't want to get too close to the thing, and she knew it wouldn't be distracted for long. Raindrops flew up, putting distance between herself and the creature. Meanwhile, Trixie felt a presence behind her and saw Cheerilee next to her, the school teacher's expression grim. But she was chuckling under her breath all the same. "I don't suppose you have an incredibly brilliant plan for how we're going to deal with this one?" Trixie gulped as the basilisk shook off its daze, and with a deep guttural growl, focused attention on her and Cheerilee. Not as much, no." "Oh well," said Cheerilee, scuffing a hoof and laying down, preparing to charge. "Plan B it is, then." "Bushel, what can you see?" asked Milkdrop, trying to push her muzzle past her older sister to peek out the window. "Hey, back up, Milk! You're making me lose my balance!" said Bushel, who was standing on top of an overturned bucket, her sister was also standing on, making the two fillies wobble a bit. Bedcrumb was still in bed, covers wrapped over his head, as he shook fearfully from the sounds coming outside. His two sisters had briefly teased him as a scaredy pony before they put all their attention toward looking out the window. "Nuh-uh! You're making me lose balance! Come on, scoot over! I can't see anything!" Bushel scrunched up her face in a frown, whose balanced on the windowsill as she poked her head out into the night, looking left and right. "Oh, looks like everything's happening on the other side of the house. We won't be able to see anything from here. Darn it! I'm missing out on Trixie in action!" Milkdrop sighed and hopped out the bucket. I don't know. I think Ma's a prettier pony. Is Trixie really special?" "Of course she is," Bushel said, waving a hoof and almost falling out the bucket in her excitement. "Whoa! I bet she's throwing that lizard around with one hoof or is turning it into a cactus with her awesome magic." A roar reached her ears, and both fillies for a second shuddered. Bushel licked her lips, looking at the window worriedly. She knew she shouldn't be worrying. Trixie was on the case. She'd take care of that basilisk and protect every pony. She was the hero after all. "And I'm missing all the heroic action," Bushel thought in dismay. Sure, Trixie had looked really tired earlier today, and for some reason Bushel still didn't quite get, hadn't been able to just make the lumber guild shove off, and she looked kind of scared when she got run up just a little bit ago, telling Bushel to inside. But that didn't mean she wasn't a hero, right? Bushel looked over at Trixie's hat, sitting on the bed where she had been snuggling with it while trying to sleep. Trixie trusted her, which felt really good. She was hesitant to disobey what Trixie said, but she so badly wanted to see the amazing unicorn actually fight a monster. An epic battle was taking place this very moment, and she wasn't there to witness it. That's like she missed the last time Trixie saved Oaton while she was sick. After a second or two of intense debate, the filly made her choice and went over to the bed, putting the hat on her head. It felt nice and tingly, though for some odd reason her headache came back when she put it on. She shook off the feeling. This was no time to let little things like a headache get in the way. As she went for Milkdrop said, What are you doing? Ma and Pa will get super mad if you don't go out there." "If they only see me, I'll keep hidden real good. I'm just going down to the Doris Hall to peek. I'm not missing Trixie's heroics again." Milkdrop, who had just been madly arguing with her sister a second ago, looked suddenly very scared. Are you actually going outside? But there's a real monster out there. Bushel, don't go, please." "Hey, no need to worry. Trixie and her friends are out there. And so's Ma and Pa. It'll be fine, you'll see. Or rather, you won't, because you'll be all here all scared while I'll be watching the show." Raindrops banked to the left, nearly avoiding the flailing, whip-like tail of the basilisk. She wasn't really all that agile, or fast to flyer, but it was pretty clear the creature wasn't used to dealing with anything that could fly around it. So far, she focused on trying to keep the basilisk's attention on her, not letting it look at her friends, which meant she had to keep looking away from its face whenever it tried looking at her. "Just don't make eye contact!" shouted Cheerilee, who charged up to deliver a bug to one of the basilisk's legs. "Not for a second!" "Sure! No problem!" Raindrops shouted back. Too much fear and adrenaline pumping through her to put much sarcasm into the words. So far, they managed to get the basilisk away from the house it had been attacking, but not much else. The 25-foot-long lizard had to have weighed several tons, and even the impressive physical strength of Raindrops and Cheerilee was doing little more than causing the thing to get more angry at them. Cheerilee was keeping her distance, sending distracting bursts of illusionary fireworks to keep the beast off balance. Raindrops was glad to see her friend keeping back, not pushing herself. But there was a problem. The pony folk of Oaton were watching, most for the safety of their homes, but several had come outside armed with various farm tools and torches and had gathered behind Mayor Sheath. Raindrops might have admired their honest desire to defend their village from such a threat, but it wasn't smart. This was clearly an angry animal, and it wasn't going to leave just because some ponies waved pitchforks at it. Then again, who was she to talk? She and her friends were trying to fight it bare-hoofed! The basilisk hissed and turned its head towards Cheerilee, who immediately ducked her head and put her eyes at ground to avoid eye contact. This was problematic given the creature raised one of its clawed arms to strike at the magenta mare. Raindrops rushed to protect her friend, looking to smack the basilisk on the back of the head while it was distracted. But suddenly, the creature snapped its head around at her. Had it just tricked her? Caught off guard, Raindrops looked at its piercing yellow eyes and felt a coldness seizing over her, stopping her in mid-flight. "Raindrops!" She heard Trixie shout, and then the world around her turned a brilliant white. "Raindrops!" Trixie screamed as the basilisk whipped its head around and fixed its eyes on the Jasmine Pegasus, who had been about to hit it when she supposedly was distracted by Cheerilee. Trixie charged forward and channeled magic through her horn, focusing all her attention on focusing the magic through her horn as fast as possible. Her head ached from all the effort. Just as Raindrops seized in the air, the first flakes of stone appearing on her wingtips and hooves, Trixie finished her spell, and a burst of light as bright as the sun appeared right between the Pegasus and basilisk. It was a simple flare spell, but it did what it needed to do. It broke the line to sight the basilisk had on Raindrops. Even so, the shock of near petrification had caused Raindrops to, well, drop out of the sky, and Trixie had to channel magic even faster to catch her friend in a blanket of telekinesis. As she did this, she heard a few cheers behind her, and Mayor Sheath bellowing, "All right, folks! Let's drive this critter off our land!" Trixie was too busy concentrating on gently getting Raindrops to the ground to try and warn them of what a bad idea this was. Even in Trixie's tired, drained state, and her general lack of knowledge on the subject, she felt pretty sure in thinking that this basilisk was acting odd. The fact that it was even attacking Oaton in the first place was strange. Why was it attacking now, when it could have done so at any time? There wasn't time to think about it. Sheath and a dozen other Oaton farmers went past her, going at the basilisk with hoes and pitchforks. One of them, the other pony Trixie vaguely recalled was named Potato Shack, paused and gave her a grin. "Guess you're taking it easy on the poor critter? Not just going to blast it with your magic?" She almost yelled at him, before she remembered she had pretty much portrayed herself as a unicorn of great power, personal apprentice to Princess Luna. It sort of implied that dealing with a rampaging basilisk should be fool's play if she wasn't holding back, as opposed to using everything she had to just keep the thing distracted and from petrifying her friend. So instead of blowing up the villager, she just grit her teeth in a tight, forced smile. "Just need to give it to Leaf Town!" Potato Shack kept grinning and joined the charge at the basilisk. Trixie got Raindrops to the ground. The Pegasus was shaking off her stunned seat, removing flecks of stone from her wingtips and hooves. Trixie sighed in relief, then turned her full focus back on the basilisk. It was surrounded by Oaton's villagers, but it seemed unperturbed by the shouting and poking at it with farm instruments. In fact, it seemed to completely ignore all the ponies around it that it could easily petrify or crush. Instead, was turning his head about as if looking for something. Raindrops had gotten airborne again, and Cheerilee was mixed in with the Oaton ponies, using her hose in place of a farm tool. The basilisk snorted in a way that sounded to Trixie very much like annoyance, and with one motion it turned itself about, slamming its tail around in a single sweep that sent ponies flying. Trixie winced. The ponies who had been knocked aside were either groaning or slowly getting back to their hooves, and Trixie hoped none of them were too badly hurt. With the ponies of Oaton temporarily dispersed, Cheerilee was left exposed. She dug under the tail, and was now giving the basilisk a hard stare. "All right! No more Miss Nice School Teacher! I hope you're ready for some discipline!" "Really, Cheerilee?" Trixie should have shook her head, and she felt she had time to be embarrassed by her friend's attempt to banter with a large lizard. The basilisk looked down at Cheerilee, who had averted her eyes while rearing up on her hind legs and charging in. The basilisk stuck with his stout jaws open to try and clamp down on the magenta mare. But she timed her own spin, and a powerful buck so it smacked the giant lizard square on the chin, this time with enough force that it clearly rung the creature's bell a bit. Raindrops then came in from above and planted all four of his hooves on top of the basilisk's back. The basilisk roared and backed up a few steps, and for a second Trixie felt a surge of hope. They were doing it! The beast was retreating! Then the basilisk snorted and let out a low hissing growl, apparently angrier than ever. Raindrops landed next to Trixie. Cheerilee had backed up a step or two herself, so that she was standing beside her friends. What's with that thing?" Raindrops asked, teeth grinding. Ears flared out as she glared back at the basilisk, too cautious to avoid its eyes. "What are we going to do to have to get it to scram?" "This is a typical basilisk behavior," said Cheerilee. "Meaning this much resistance should have made it give up. I don't know what could be driving it." The young ponies gathered up again, those who had been injured hanging back, and Mayor Sheets directing them to go to the tavern. Picturesque was helping those who injured legs to get to safety. Trixie noticed most of them were casting looks her way, most of them hopeful, and to Trixie's fear, some of them looked confused. A few of the Oaton ponies were looking at her as if they were wondering why their hero hadn't gotten rid of the monster yet. Those looks sent cold slabs of fear through her. She gathered her strained thoughts and looked back toward the basilisk. It was hunting down, claws flexing, apparently getting ready to charge at her and her friends. Its eyes were focused on Cheerilee still, but the school teacher was doing a good job of not meeting the look, staring off to the side while looking sidelong at the basilisk's feet. Trixie wondered why the basilisk seemed so fixated on Cheerilee. A thought ran through her mind, half formed from sleep deprivation, but still clear. What if some pony was influencing the basilisk? Hadn't Cheerilee mentioned something about her friend, Tarnus, having an affinity for animals? On that hunch, Trixie channeled magic into her horn, activating her magic sight spell as he said, "Raindrops! Cheerilee! Try to keep it distracted just a tad longer! I need to check something!" "Check something?" Raindrops asked. "Like what?" "I think magic's involved in this. I'm going to find out for sure. Just keep it busy, but just don't get hurt." "Right. Keeping the dangerous monster busy without suffering mortal injury or getting stoned," said Raindrops with a little half grin.
It's like college all over again."
Trixie wasn't going to touch that comment with a 100-foot raised levitation spell. There was a second of tension as the three mares from Ponyville squared off with the basilisk that was ready to pounce. Then a dry, cold wind blew through the town, blowing, of all things, a loose bush that looked suspiciously like a tumbleweed across the road. The basilisk roared. So did Cheerilee. Raindrops shot off like a dart. Trixie channeled magic. The folk of Oaton held their breaths. Unseen by any pony, a little yellow filly, who had chanced creeping out behind one of the buildings, watched on, eyes wide and mouth gaping in awe. The basilisk charged, its steps plodding and shuffling like the massive alligator assembled. Cheerilee galloped to meet it, eyes downcast to avoid petrification. Raindrops was flying above her, hooves outstretched, face a mass of stoic determination. Trixie's attention was focused entirely on her magic sight. Every second counted, so she wasted not a one. as Cheerilee dove to the side of the basilisk, striking maw, delivering a buck to the side of the creature's face. Trixie examined the air around the flight, eyes narrowing. Raindrops swooped in and, with an odd "Hyah!" shout that Trixie wondered at the purpose of, delivered a hefty kick, focusing all of her hoof power through a hind leg on the opposite side of the basilisk's head. Trixie blinked, starting to see it. A crown of magic wrapping around the head of the basilisk. White aura, twisting around the monster's entire head like multiple layers of strings. The pattern looked like, yes, enchantment, and the aura was strong, but it had an odd quality to it. The aura fluctuated and twisted unnaturally, erratically, like the magic didn't really know what it was supposed to be doing, or rather, was fighting the notion that it was being driven to form a spell at all. But more important than all of that was that Trixie could see where the spell was coming from, following a single strand of magic that was trailing off to the north and east. The basilisk was turning about, growling and slashing into the air at Raindrops, who tried to fly back out of reach, almost getting clear, but Raindrops wasn't that fast of a flyer, even on her best days. Trixie winced as the Pegasus was battered through the air by a claw, but when Raindrops lacked in speed, she made up for in strength and stamina. Raindrops righted herself in the air, battered but still all right, and flew right back into the fight. Cheerilee was busy playing a deadly game of jump rope with the basilisk's tail, was kept trying to whip the magenta mare off her hooves. But she was still doing well jumping over the low sweeps, or ducking under the high ones. Unfortunately, the flailing basilisk was starting to cause Oaton even more damage, its tail smashing through windows, and its claws gouging out portions of the wall. Trixie was so busy trying to pinpoint exactly where the white thread of magic was originating from, trotting along trying to follow it, that she didn't notice Bushel hiding behind the corner of a nearby house, watching her curiously. Trixie focused, drowning out the sounds of the fight, putting all her attention onto that one thread of magic.
You're close. You'd need line of sight to control your tool. I'm going to find you and put a stop to this.
And there it was! The white thread of magic was originating just outside of town, across the dry riverbed, where Trixie spotted a dark, cloaked figure huddled down, intently watching the basilisk.
Gotcha!
Trixie said triumphantly, and so intent was she on getting the culprit and putting an end to the threat to Oaton, and maybe even finishing this whole matter once and for all, she broke into a full gallop towards the shadowy figure. She ignored her exhaustion, her tired legs. Exercising weekly with Raindrops had gotten her at least doing that much, and adrenaline and the thrill of possibly solving everything at one go was driving her forward. She pounded across the riverbed, and the shadowy figure finally noticed her, launching into its hooves, turning and running. Trixie caught sight of the cream-colored rag tail and mane streaming out from the dark forest green cloak she wore.
Get back here! You're not escaping this time!
This had to be the real culprit, the one who destroyed the dam, for whatever reason. This pony was the key to everything. Trixie was sure of it. But by Luna's night this pony was fast. Trixie was having to go all out just to keep this fleeing form in sight, let alone catch up. Before Trixie knew it, she was clear across the fields and rushing into the depths of the South Everfree, chasing her quarry, but utterly unaware of events transpiring in Oaton right behind her. Bushel had been so filled with excitement she felt ready to burst. Here were the heroes battling a monster for the darkest of nightmares, and here she was, with a front bush seat to the action. It was thrilling beyond anything the little filly could imagine. Only as she watched, she noticed something odd. While Raindrops and Cheerilee were fighting head-on, Trixie was just sort of standing there, hanging back. Her horn was glowing, so obviously she was doing some kind of magic, but Bushel couldn't tell what. No bolts of lightning, or great bouts of fire, or huge gusts of wind to batter the basilisk while being summoned. No levitating rocks to pelt the beast at a distance from. Not even any of those cool fireworks to distract it. Nothing. Trixie, aside from the horn glow and looking about oddly, had seemed to be doing nothing. Bushel was confused by this, but didn't let her faith in Hero falter. Surely, Trixie was just planning something super amazing, and was just waiting for the right moment to unleash it. Perhaps she just needed time to charge up some kind of ultra-powerful spell. Bushel didn't know, but she edged closer to the action, darting from one bush to the next, then sneaking around the corner of one of the houses right next to the fight. Whatever awesome things Trixie was doing was surely about to do, Bushel didn't want to miss it. Then, Trixie suddenly blurted, "Gotcha!" which made Bushel jump and duck back behind the house. When she glanced to peek out again, her eyes widened. What was Trixie doing? Bushel didn't want to believe it, but was Trixie running away? The azure unicorn was bolting off into the night, directly away from the fight. But that didn't make sense. Trixie, the great and powerful Trixie, Nice Justice, the Hero of Oaton, was abandoning it? Bushel didn't want to believe it, and chose not to. She ran out onto the street, ready to call out after her hero. Because surely, this was some kind of mistake, and there had to be a reason Trixie was fleeing. But before Bushel could shout, there was another voice that called out, "Watch out!" as he felt something hit her from the side, and she went tumbling. It didn't hurt much, but she was dizzy and got the wobbly hooves, wondering what had happened as she put a hoof to her head. Next to her, she saw the Jasmine Pegasus Raindrops lying on the ground, looking rather battered with one of her wings a little bent. The Pegasus got to her hooves, shaking herself. Had the Pegasus mare just pushed Bushel out of the way? Out of the way of what? A deep rumbling hiss filled the air above Bushel, and the filly felt her entire body chill to the bone. Slowly, like the jerking movements of a doll, she turned her head around and looked right into the boiling eyes of the basilisk. Terror overwhelmed her at the same time. A tingling sensation rooted her body to the spot. For a moment, she felt her hooves begin to harden and grow cold as the basilisk's eyes bore into her. But then, something strange happened. Her head suddenly burst into a splitting headache, and the cold feeling in her hooves vanished, as if being sucked away. She felt her head throbbing, and the world spun. Something warm and soft caught her, as she felt her hooves wrap around her. She heard shouting, several voices away at once. "Get her away from it! Don't you dare hurt my daughter! What's the eyes? Don't look at his pony! Eyes for pony's sake! Cheerilee! Now!" Bushel couldn't see what was going on, because he was being pressed face first into somebody's chest, and with a wiggle of her head, she managed to look up. It was her mother. Picturesque was holding her protectively, and for a second, Bushel felt a comforting relief at being in her mother's hooves. But something was wrong. Her mother was staring up at something and wasn't moving, under her brace becoming rigid. Bushel managed to turn her head enough to see the basilisk, its eyes fixated on her mother. Bushel began to feel a cold hardness spreading through her mother, stone starting to replace flesh. Raindrops was hurting. She wasn't going to deny it. The basilisk had managed to get in solid hits on her, the most recent when she had to push that filly, Bushel, out of the way of the creature's random tail slap. Her right wing was a little sprained, but she could still use it, and she wasn't planning on stopping until the town was safe. The last hit had knocked those glasses off her nose, sending them sailing next to the basilisk's stomping claws. But she spotted Cheerilee picked them up before the enchanted item could get smashed up. Raindrops was almost disappointed they didn't, if only because it gave her an excuse to Trixie to not have to wear them again. She had bigger concerns on her mind, though. The sooner the basilisk was dealt with, the sooner she could go find Trixie. What had she been thinking, running off like that? Probably wasn't thinking at all, with no sleep, Raindrops thought, grinding her teeth. I should've... Blast it! I don't know what I should've done! She was angry, and normally, this was the kind of thing that was par for the course with her, as much as she disliked that. But at least in this moment, she had something resembling a valid to focus on her anger on. The basilisk. She saw it staring down at Bushel, and another mare that was holding the filly. Picturesque. She was staring at the basilisk, protectively shielding her daughter, but fixated on the beast's eyes. "What's the eyes? Don't look at its eyes for pony's sake!" That was Cheerilee, on the other side of the basilisk, putting out a hoof toward Picturesque with an alarmed shout. Raindrops grit her teeth past the pain in her wing, and flew up into the air, fixing the basilisk with all the heat her enraged gaze could muster. "Cheerilee! Now!" She didn't wait to see if Cheerilee acknowledged her, trusting in the school teacher to realize they had to stop the basilisk, and they had to stop it now. Raindrops flew forward, taking a deep breath and holding it, clearing her mind, letting everything in her perception still to a single moment. Iron hoof. The art of calming the mind, focusing it, and then unleashing its potential through a single point of the body. That of the hoof. It was an art of control, which was what had attracted Raindrops to it. She wanted control over herself, the ability to focus and remain calm no matter what was happening. Of course, she was still just a student, and she was pretty pissed. Sometimes, you work with what you got. She flipped in the air, letting out the breath she had been holding with a focusing "Kya!" shout. She brought the heel end of her right hind leg down on the top of the basilisk's head with all the force she could muster focused on that one point. The force of the blow knocked the basilisk's head down toward the ground, right where Cheerilee was waiting with a full-force buck straight to the creature's face. The basilisk stumbled, its leg trembling from the blows. He shook his head, eyes unfocused, and snorted, and turned his head about, looking at the town as if seeing it all for the first time. While Raindrops wasn't exactly an expert on animals, in fact, she had no idea at all, she still got the impression that the basilisk was quite confused. It sniffed the air, sniffed at the ponies around it, and, with a low, displeased hiss, it abruptly turned around and began tromping off toward the forest. For a second, Raindrops just hovered in the air, watching it go.
Left looking like it had forgotten what was there for her in the first place.
Raindrops looked down at Cheerilee, who had made the comment, was hoofing her chin and squinting after the retreating basilisk with a ponderous expression. Raindrops landed next to the schoolteacher, taking slow, deep breaths to calm her racing heart.
Yeah. Well, at least it's gone now.
The sound of a sobbing voice behind him drew the two mares' attention. Bushel was hugging her mother. Raindrops felt her ears droop, a sinking feeling in her hooves. Cheerilee closed her eyes, sadly shaking her head.
Well, at least Trixie brought the materials to learn a depetrification spell.
Raindrops supposed that was some consolation, but it didn't change the current scene before them. Picturesque had protected her daughter, but Raindrops and Cheerilee hadn't been fast enough. The once bright yellow mare was now solid gray stone. Bustle hooves were wrapped around her mother's barrel, crying. Nearby, Mare's Sheath and a number of the less injured Oaton ponies were gathered. For a moment, no pony talked. Sheath went up to his wife and daughter, putting a hoof on both the cold stone face of his wife and another around the face of his still flesh and blood daughter, and drew himself into an embrace with both, whispering something to Bushel that seemed to only make the filly's tears come faster. Then, some pony did speak, words that cut through Raindrops' tired mind, and realized the night was far from over. Where's Trixie? Trixie galloped through the trees for only a brief time before she realized that the terrain was not made for this kind of speed. She'd easily end up tripping and breaking a leg if she tried to keep up this pace. It was vexing, though, given that her quarry was moving so fast that within a minute inside the dense thickets, Trixie had lost sight of the black-cloaked figure.
Must know this forest well, to move so easily in it,
Trixie breathed to herself.
But I shall not be deterred! You may be fast, but I'm smart. Oh, and magic.
She began to weave a spell through her horn, bringing her magic sight back into play. Even if the pony wasn't casting that enchantment anymore, there should still be a residual trail to follow. Aha! There, just faint enough to be seen, a girdly white trail of magical aurora. Trixie shook her head as the fatigue threatened to overtake her, but she began to steadfastly follow the trail. A current of worry swashed through her now. She wasn't galloping off in a rush. Were Cheerilee and Raindrops okay? Well, they were both mares far more physically able than she was, and had been handling the basilisk well enough she last seen. But an image of either, or both her friends as a glorified guardian ornaments flashed through her mind. And what of the ponies of Oaton? Were they okay?
If you worry about it, you'll lose your focus, Trixie. Concentrate! This may be your only chance to track down the culprit in all of this.
Minutes stretched by, slow and agonizing as her legs, fed up with Trixie's silly, continuous use of them, began to make their pain known to her in earnest. She focused past it, forcing herself to put one hoof before the other. Heroes didn't tire. Heroes didn't stop. They got the job. She shook her hair fiercely. Had she almost fallen asleep on her hooves? Suddenly, A wind passed through the dense trees of the forest, chilling Trixie to the bone, and carrying with it a sound, like the whispering of many voices, coursing through the leaves. She paused, unable to quite make any of it out, but it sent a cold feeling into her, worse than the wind itself. Instinctively, she pulled her cape closer around herself, and channeled an invisibility spell without dropping her magic sight. It was an additional strain on her, but she suddenly felt much better, being unseen. As she trudged on by, the wind only got worse, as did the whispering. Every now and again, she thought she'd be able to make out words, but even when she did, they were nonsensical, as if another language. It was starting to affect her head as badly as her fatigue. Once or twice she lost sight of the smoky trail of magic she was following, but she was not going to lose sight of it. She refused. At length, she came upon a clearing, one that was a dozen yards across and oblong. Here, high untamed grasses grew in thick clumps around a small hillock in the north end of the clearing, one that held the entrance to a cave. There, Trixie felt with a certainty, was something wrong with that cave. The shape of its mouth didn't seem right, as if it was carved rather than naturally formed. She didn't look at the cave for long, though, because she felt the ground tremble slightly, and watched eyed-wise as the basilisk marched from another edge of the clearing and entered it. The creature looked battered and angry. It came to the center of the clearing and raised its head, making a loud noise. Trixie hunkered down behind a bush, even though she knew she was still invisible. What if this thing could hunt by scent, though? Another trilling call answered the first. And Trixie's eyes went wide as a second and larger basilisk poked its head out of the cave. Walking next to this larger basilisk was the cloak pony, her hood pulled back. Trixie blinked. Cheerilee was right. In the dark lighting, tarnished copper coins, blue sea coat, and cream mane could easily be mistaken for Trixie's own coloring. Tarnis looked as tired as Trixie felt, her mane a frizzy, tangled mess, her violet eyes carrying dark circles around them. She smiled at the smaller basilisk and approached it, pulling out a hoof. The basilisk lowered its head and let her pet it on the bridge of its snout, and Trixie heard Tarnis speak, her voice a soft chime, but somehow it was cracked and strained.
There, it's okay. I don't mind that you couldn't bring her to me. I forgive you. I just had to find another way to meet her. Now, go rest with your mate. I'll need you again soon.
The smaller basilisk made a small, rumbling sound that reminded Trixie of a very loud whirr as it moved off to its cave mouth, nuzzling with the bigger basilisk before both vanished inside. Trixie debated on her next move. Should she try to take the Tarnis now, with two basilisks nearby, apparently at Tarnis's command? Trixie suddenly wasn't enjoying her odds. But that was if she tried a straight fight, not at all Trixie's style. If she could surprise Tarnis with a sleeping spell, she might be able to drag the other mare away without the basilisk knowing.
Oh, what are you waiting for?
Trixie froze. Tarnis had spoken, though she wasn't looking Trixie's way. Instead, she was looking about in nothing in particular, though her expression was not friendly.
You're here for me tonight, trying to make me go back. Send me back to a place far away from my real friends. You're with her, aren't you? I know what she's here for. She's here for my brother, not me. What you just want to hurt me, don't you? Send me somewhere bad. Well, I'm late. Come on out. You can meet all of my friends.
The wind had been slow a moment ago, but it kicked up, sharper and colder than before, and the whispering was back, a dozen times over. The whispering voices felt like they were trying to call at Trixie's ears, as she forced herself to ignore it. Tarnis was looking around, face screwed up in a mixture of rage and fear. It was clear, though. She didn't know where Trixie was, just that Trixie was there. Trixie wondered how.
Show yourself! You can hide your phone, but you can't hide your smell!
Trixie glanced, then experimentally stiffed herself. Okay, so it had been a long day. I involved a lot of walking and running, and she hadn't had time to take a bath or shower. Still, did the crazy cave pony have to blatantly insult her like that? Tarnis's glare glared around the forest, then blew out in a sad snort.
don't want to come out. That's fine. I'll have one of my friends drag you out.
Taz's horn lit up with white glow. Once again, Trixie noted how erratic the magical aurora looked. The aura flickered with twists and sharp spiking protrusions, very unlike the normal gentle waving appearance of most magical auroras. Trixie also thought she saw a little discoloration in the white, like small snippets of green, black, violet, and every other sickly shade. They appeared for a second and be gone just as fast. But it was very clear there was something wrong with this pony's magic. Magic she was using to send white tendrils into the cave, which was accompanied by the familiar growling of a basilisk. Trixie might not have been an animal expert, but if Tarnus could smell her, she was pretty sure the basilisk wasn't going to have trouble with that. It was galling to admit it to herself, but it looked like her only choice was to retreat. Trixie! Can you hear me? It was Raindrops' voice, speaking straight into Trixie's ear, where a small magic silver clasp was. Trixie started a bit upon hearing it. It quickly put a hoof to the clasp, as he slowly began to back up into the deeper forest. The basilisk was emerging, under the sway of Tarnus' spell, and already snorting at the air.
Yes,
Trixie whispered.
Hearing you quite clear. Glad to know you're okay. But really can't talk right now. Kind of needing to run. Much easier with all four hoofs, as it happens.
Run? Trixie, where are you? What's happening? Raindrops sounded a little panicked. Trixie suddenly felt fat and foolish, having run off on her own like this. She had been so fixated on seeing Tarnus, she hadn't just stopped and thought of she waited and helped deal with the basilisk, then she could have still probably followed the magical aurora, and had her friends next to her right now.
Just a slight miscalculation on my part. I'm in the forest, I think a mile or so east of Oaton. Don't really know for sure.
The basilisk's nostrils flared as it seemed to pick up her trail, and turned its face toward her.
Right. Gotta run now. See you soon. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Trixie, just hang on. I'm on my way. Trixie would have responded, but now she was too busy turning and galloping full away and through the forest, as the basilisk roared and began to chase after her, pausing only long enough for Tarnus to climb onto his back.
I know,
cried out Tarnus.
I bet if I have you, then she'll come to me on her own. And then I'll settle everything. I thought she did her own friends, but she lied to me. She made more friends after tossing me aside like garbage. And now she's got friends like you instead of me. Why? Wasn't I good enough?
Trixie decided not to get drawn into a banter session with a clearly unhinged pony. She sincerely hoped the rest of Cheerilee's old friends were a lot more solid and less prone to crazy like these copper coins were. It suddenly made a lot more sense to her, though, why Shiny wanted to get his sister back, without the authorities getting involved. There would be a serious scandal if it got out that one of the copper coins was a borderline mad pony. Borderline, Trixie? Borderline? Not family ruining, but bad enough that it'd make political life in the Night Court rough. A sort of stigma that could be used against them. Trixie found herself frowning and berating herself. It was also quite possible that Shiny just wanted his sister back because of, affection, like siblings are supposed to have. He probably didn't want her being locked away anywhere. He just wanted to help her personally. Trixie tripped over a root and face planted in the grass. Right, think letter, running, now! She got to her hooves and resumed her gallop, but her little fall had given the basilisk a chance to close the distance on her. Tarnus was laughing, seemingly enjoying the ride. Trixie was still invisible, so while the basilisk could track her general location by scent, it wasn't able to target her directly. Trixie heard claws slashing at trees behind her, the snap of jaws hoof lengths away from her hindquarters. Always close, never quite reaching her. Her lungs burned from the scorching cold air, her legs trembling from the overwork, and the freezing winds blasted by her ears with the howling of all the monsters of Tartarus. Just quit running and give up, cooed Tarnus. If you do, I won't even do anything to you. I just want you for bait. Yes! Nice tasty bait for Cheerilee. I just want to talk to her. Maybe
hurt a little bit for treating our friendship like something disposable. But not much, just a little sharing of my pain. It's that part of friendship, sharing. Oh, for Luna's moon, will you stop complaining? Trixie blurted without thinking, fed up with what she was hearing. Wait, I heard. It was you acting like a spoiled fool and ran away from home just because your friend wanted to take the time to pursue a career. How does that count as abandoning you, you moron? Moron? I'm not the one who just gave away her position. Trixie had a second to complete that. Yes, indeed. She probably should have just kept her mouth shut and kept running before a basilisk's claw tripped her, and she sent sprawling, trembling end over end until she ended up on her back, facing up at the menacing form of a giant lizard. Tarnus was now standing on its head, gazing down at her. Trixie realized she lost her concentration on her invisibility spell. It was in now plain view. The basilisk lowered its head toward her, and Tarnus leaned down with it, a triumphant smile on her otherwise somewhat crazed features. The wind churned through the trees, those discordant whispers echoing over the scene like the patrons at a theater murmuring over the climax of a performance. As the wind moved through the branches, Trixie saw a break in them, and saw up into the sky above, and saw a jasmine form sailing past. Grazia, Tarnus said, with a poorly done, mocking imitation of Trixie's voice. Trixie smiled. Her horn lit up. Not quite. Fireworks shot up into the air, exploding in front of Tarnus and further up into the sky, detonating in a brilliant green and violet flashes above the tree line. The basilisk reeled from the light show, and Tarnus fell off the head with a little yelp. Trixie was too tired to even get up, but kept up her magic, sending more fireworks into the sky as he put a hoof to her ear clasp. Here I am. Could use a lift. Just as the basilisk recovered, and Tarnus was getting to her hoofs, a jasmine bolt smashed through the top layers of the forest like the branches weren't even there, and landed with a solid thud on the wet forest earth. Raindrops didn't waste a second. She scooped Trixie up and threw the unicorn onto her back, and with a mighty, slow flaps of her wings, powered up through the dense canopy. Tarnus yelled in wordless rage, and the basilisk's roar took to swipe, but Raindrops was already too high, breaking through the tops of the trees and into the open sky. A few minutes passed of just silent flying before Raindrops looked back at Trixie, concern and relief on her features with equal measure. You okay? Yes. Trixie was finding it hard to even talk. Just, a little tired. Raindrop smiled ruefully, shaking her head. You keep pulling stunts like what you did, and you and I are going to have words! Trixie was too tired to argue. Wasn't even sure she would. I will admit, I perhaps didn't think my actions through all that well. Wasn't a total waste, however. I did discover, more or less, what this Tarnus mare is hiding. Maybe something we can use to get leverage with Count Shining. There are more added complications. More complications? Raindrops didn't sound surprised. Seems to be the status quo around here. What's up? 2 basilisks for starters, Trixie said, and felt Raindrops tense beneath her. One bigger than the other. Don't know what that means. Maybe Cheerilee will know. Next... There's definitely something affecting Tarnus. I heard whispers in that forest that I know aren't natural. Her magical strains, too. I don't think her being not all there is at least partially due to an outside influence. What kind of influence? Raindrops asked, tone a little unnerved. Whispers in the forest don't sound all that healthy to me, yeah. But what do you think it is? Not sure. Not sure it even matters at this point. We just have to get the copper coins to leave Oaton alone. Oh, what time is it? With my clock at home. Raindrops said with a small laugh. But by the moon's position, I guess a little after midnight? 4 hours until shipment shows at that place. Gotta go there and find out. Trixie was having trouble finishing a full thought, let alone a full sentence.
You let me and Cheerilee worry about that. You're going to sleep the second we get back. Raindrops glared at Trixie when the unicorn looked like he was about to protest. Not a word! Trixie lowered her head, carefully keeping her hose around Raindrops, even though the Pegasus was remarkably good at flying steady, to the point where Trixie was oddly comfortable just sort of lounging on her friend's back. She was too tired to even feel embarrassed about close contact, which she usually wasn't comfortable with. Then a thought struck through the foggy cloud her mind was becoming.
Oaton. Every pony. All right?
Raindrops' silence at the question cut through Trixie's exhaustion and made her stomach drop. Trixie unsteadily got off of Raindrops when the Pegasus landed and took a few hasty steps before almost falling. Raindrops was there to catch her, and Cheerilee was approaching them quickly from a crowd of Oaton ponies. One of them, Mayor Sheath.
Trixie! You look terrible! Cheerilee said, then frowned. Sorry, that came out rather blunt, didn't it? What happened?
Yeah, why did you suddenly run away? Asked Sheath, tone cool, eyes accusing. Trixie waved a hoof.
Cloaked pony, controlling basilisk, chased, tried to catch, didn't go well. Where are my saddlebags?
What? Sheath caught his head. You flee the fact. My wife gets turned to stone, and you want your saddlebags? Trixie lulled her head to the side, giving Sheath a level look that was somewhat ruined by her nearly falling over.
Saddlebags, yes, those. Sorry about picturesque. Spellbook and bags. Learning to fix the problem. Saddlebags, now please!
Trixie, I warned you, you need sleep, warned Raindrops.
Yes, sleep is good. We'll get sleep. Just want to get spellbook out. Find right spell. Study it. A little.
She felt she had to at least get started on a depetrification spell. She said to protect Oaton, and she was not only feeling tired, she was feeling a hollow, sinking guilt. All those words she had spoken upon first arriving, claiming herself as some grand defender of justice, who would surely save the town, they were echoing so hollow in her mind now. But she wasn't giving up. She just had to keep going. The world felt like it was swimming. She tried to shake her head to clear the feeling that only made it worse. She saw the pony folk of Oaton looking at her. So many faces, filled with emotions she didn't want to see. Ponies who seemed so jubilant before, celebrating the return of their hero, were now looking at her with expressions of shock, in some cases concern and worry, others looking almost betrayed. They were the looks of an audience who realized what the illusion was all along. Then, through the crowd, Trixie saw Picturesque, the petrified mare still in a position on her haunches, arms wrapped around the air as if she had been protectively hugging something. Next to the statue was a familiar hat. Her hat. She idly wondered what it was doing there.
Is Bushel okay?
She found herself asking, but she was hearing her own voice as if from a great distance. Sheath was suddenly there, looking at her. His expression guarded, but his eyes no longer cold. But why? As if finally seeing something for the first time. So he's Royston. I'm starting to agree with your friend. You need to as well.
No. Soon. Just need to.
Trixie tried to walk past Sheath, but firm hose were grabbing at her. Cheerilee, Raindrops, they were on either side of her, supporting her. Sheath was saying something to his ponies, the Oaton folk listening to him, but Trixie couldn't hear the words. She tried to walk on her own. After all, a hero ought to do that much. But her legs were not responding to her anymore, and her friends were being silly and carrying her now anyway. Trixie fell into dreamless sleep before her friends even managed to carry her to the guest room. Trixie woke up to sunlight on her face, when she tried to bat away in annoyance. However, random hoof failing doesn't do much against sunlight, so she soon gave up that particular plan, and instead used a much more effective blanket as a shield. She curled up tired in bed and took a deep, sighing breath. Then she snapped wide awake and threw the covers up, nearly springing out of bed. In doing so, She almost bowled over Raindrops, who had been sleeping head down in the bed, but sitting on her haunches next to it. The Pegasus awoke with a lazy shake of her head, then blinked at Trixie.
What time is it?
Trixie asked, scrambling to the window and looked out.
Blast! It's late morning. Why did you let me sleep so long?
Trixie, calm down, said Raindrops. You needed the rest.
I know I needed it, but I can't afford it! What about the shipment last night? We missed it?
You missed it. Me and Cheerilee didn't, said Raindrops, and came around to the bed, walking up next to Trixie. Now, will you calm down? Trixie took a deep breath and tried to do just that. Then her eyes slid to the bedpost, where she saw her cape hanging, and next to it, her hat. She remembered last night, the fight with the basilisk, chasing Tarnist, the return to Oaton after Raindrops had rescued her, Frescoesque turned to stone, and her hat laying next to the mare, the hat she'd given Bushel to look after. Apparently, the filly didn't feel the need to do that anymore.
I failed again,
Trixie said, putting a hoof onto the hat.
I told them I'd take care of everything. And this is how it's turning out.
Trixie, don't talk like that, Raindrops said, keeping close. You haven't failed anything yet. Though, okay, going to tell you straight. This would have been a lot easier if you'd come out and just told Oaton the truth from the start.
Yeah.
And right now, I think the thing you need to do is to come out with the truth. Tell them who we really are. That we're not powerful Night Court members or the like. We're just 3 simple ponies who want to help them. They need to know the real Trixie. Not the great and powerful Trixie. Not Night Justice. The real Trixie. Element of magic. Representative of the Night Court of Luna in Ponyville. No more, no less.
But what if it'll break their confidence in us? What if they hate me for boasting?
Trixie, they're already worried and doubting. Most of them are worried for you, though, not about you. They all saw what condition you were in last night. They saw what lengths you pushed yourself through to try and catch the pony responsible for attacking their town. Trust them, Trixie, and tell the truth. Me and Cheerilee will be right there next to you. Trixie held up the hat, looking at it curiously.
And what is the truth, Raindrops? I'm not even sure what it is anymore. Am I the hero they sing about? Or just a fraud that's gotten in over her head?
She felt a hoof smack lightly upside her head.
Ow! Hey! What's that for?
Trixie said, rubbing her head and giving Raindrops a little glare. Because you're being foolish. Doesn't matter if you're a hero or not. You came to help Oaton, right?
Yes, that was the idea.
Then what else matters? Tell them that. Then, whether they accept you or not, accept that. Then you, me, and Cheerilee, we're gonna finish this. Smash right through all the lies and mysteries surrounding this whole mess and sort things out. That's what we came here to do. That's the truth. Trixie paused a moment, then slowly smiled, put her hat back on, and adjusted it with a hoof until it sat just right. Then levitated on her cape with a force. Then gave Raindrops a grateful look.
Thanks, Raindrops. I think I'll be okay now. I need to talk to the ponies about it. Hersto, spellbook.
She found her saddlebag tucked next to her bed, and levitated out the spellbook she brought with the depetrification spell on it. It was one of the many books she recovered from Twilight Sparkle's cart a month back. And while Trixie was not very good at learning magic from the kind of esoteric writings to be found in these books, she was oddly grateful for the Purple Unicorn's vast collection of books. It was affording Trixie a chance to really branch out with her magic. And in this case, it was a good fortune that there had been a book that had a spell needed to reverse the basilisk's stare. The basilisk's ability to turn living things to stone was, fundamentally, an innate magical spell in itself. Reversing it shouldn't be too complicated. As she and Raindrops tried it out, Trixie was already glancing at the spell in question, as they levitated the book next to her. She spotted Bushel curled up onto the living room couch down the hallway. The filly was sleeping, and from the look of her, had been crying most of the night. The sight put a stab of deeper guilt in Trixie, but also ignited a deeper sense of determination. She had to make this up to the filly. She restored Bristle's mother, and the other ponies turned to stone. Trixie paused by the sleeping filly, and noticed that she seemed paler than normal.
Was Bustle hurt last night?
I don't think so. I managed to push her out of the way of harm, that her mother shielded from her basilisk stare. Although, happened so fast, I thought I imagined it. But before Picturesque came in to protect her, I thought the basilisk had Bustle. I thought I saw it stare right at her. Weird thing. She didn't start turning to stone. She just sort of... Well, I thought I saw her forehead glow for a second. Trixie raised an eyebrow, and Raindrops shrugged. Like I said, happened really fast. Though, maybe I had just been seeing things. Trixie glanced down at Bushel, concern welling up in her as she slowly reached out a hoof to strike the filly's mane, but then retracted it. No reason to chance waking her. The filly's pale features could be just attributed to the night she had just had, seeing her mother turn to stone before her. It was also possible that Raindrops had merely been seeing things. In the middle of that kind of situation, it'd be easy to think you saw something amid all the confusion. Still, something was nagging at her mind. Now that she was rested, she was thinking much more clearly. And something Bushel had said the previous night.
Magic hat,
Trixie said. Huh? Raindrops gave Trixie a confused look.
She called my hat magic last night. I don't think I ever told her it was actually magic, though. So, how did she know it was?
She's a fool, Trixie. One that worships you. She probably just assumed. Trixie frowned.
Was that all it was?
It made sense, but something was still bothering her. She shook the feeling off.
I suppose so. Cheerilee is downstairs?
Yeah. We were waiting for you to wake up so we could eat. To bring you up up to speed what we saw last night. Downstairs, the tavern area of the building wasn't empty. There were a few Oaton ponies gathered around, and many of them giving Trixie various looks as she came downstairs. Some of those looks were relieved, but many were guarded, a few looking worried. Mayor Sheath was behind the bar, seeming to nurse his own drink as much as he was serving them out. He looked up at her as well as she and Raindrops entered.
Mayor Sheath,
Trixie said, with an oddly formal tone.
Could you please gather your ponies? I need to talk with every pony about something very important. Say, out in the center of town in half an hour, so I can eat and confer with my friends.
Sheath was silent a moment, then nodded solemnly, as if he knew what Trixie intended to do. Fair enough. I'll go spread the word. As the mayor left Trixie and Raindrops joined Cheerilee at one of the center tables, the remaining Oaton pony folk were still looking at them, and Trixie gauged what she hoped was an encouraging smile, but couldn't tell how well it went over. Only one of them, Potato Shack, she recognized, returned the smile.
Well, you're looking much better after some shut-eye,
said Cheerilee, pushing a plate toward Trixie.
Save the hay and oats sandwich for you. Mug of ale, too.
Trixie accepted the food and drink gratefully, and between bites asked,
You and Raindrops went to that meeting point last night. When did you two sleep?
We managed some hours before morning came, said Raindrops, stretching her wings. Unlike you, we got into sleep night before last, too. We had more push to ourselves with.
Now, as to what we found, unfortunately not much,
said Cheerilee with a sigh.
What do you mean, not much?
Trixie asked incredulously.
I thought you said you were fairly certain the shipment would be animals being illegally smuggled. And I still am,
said Cheerilee.
It's just that the ponies doing the shipment were being very careful. Big wagons, covered in canvas, with quiet, smooth transfers of wrapped boxes being moved into the lumber camp. The entire affair was being heavily guarded, both by Coppercoin guards and other ponies, and they worked like clockwork to get the wagons unloaded quickly. Me and Raindrops watched, and I tried to get a little closer to the action, but even then all I could tell was that a lot of crates had distinct smells. They could hide the animals, but not the scents they gave off. My guess is that Shiny is going to hold the animals in the camp for a night, giving us a window of opportunity to sneak back in and collect hard evidence of what he's doing.
Any idea why he's doing this, though? Asked Raindrops. I mean, the way you told it, he's all about getting his sisters back. So, what's with the animal smuggling?
Trixie frowned, thinking, then offered, Bait. Tarnished. He seemed very in tune, I guess, with the basilisk.
Cheerilee nodded.
She was always good with animals. Saved us a lot of trouble with guard dogs back in the day.
Trixie grimaced.
Never was fond of guard dogs myself. Anyway, maybe Shiny's expecting Tarnished to attack the lumber camp again?
Something clicked in her head.
Probably the same reason she attacked the camp a year ago! I'm willing to bet Sawblade was something similar to this. That note you found in the office suggests as much anyway.
Cheerilee nodded.
Makes sense. So, that means sometime tonight, Tarnished might attack the lumber camp? Or send a basilisk to do it. Basilisk?
Cheerilee asked.
Oh, right. Still need to tell you that. There are 2 basilisks. The one we fought here in Oaton was the smaller of the 2. Tarnished has them holed up in some creepy cave in the forest.
Cheerilee gave a small boom noise as he thought.
2 basilisks. The smaller one. It must be the male. That would explain its more aggressive behavior if the other's a female and they're...
Cheerilee? Trixie was wondering what the magenta mare was thinking of.
I'll have to double-check my reference material. Want to be sure. Don't worry about it, Trixie. I'm just bouncing a thought around my head. But it's probably a minor point right now. So you found Tarnished. Did you speak to her?
Trixie made a face, remembering the crazy mare's ranting.
Wouldn't have really called it a conversation. She's really unhealthily fixated on you, Cheerilee. She's as likely to come after you again as to come after the lumber camp.
Cheerilee's expression became more somber, looking down at the table.
That's probably why Shiny was so upset to see me. He knew Tarnished would target me.
She took in a deep breath, then put on a bright smile.
Been a long time since I lectured anypony that wasn't a foal. But you better believe Tarnished is going to get the talking of a lifetime! Really, sending basilisks into a peaceful farm community like this, it's time that mare grew up!
What's our move, then? Asked Raindrops. Do you have a plan, Trixie?
Trixie had been thinking on that very then, and managed a confident smile. Of course! I suspect Sawdust knows a lot more than he's letting on, and Shiny's made the mistake of leaving a lot of his plans exposed in that office. I'm going to sneak in there and find proof we can use to force the copper coins to abandon the lumber guild, or face a full investigation.
You know, I've been wondering why you just don't contact the princess about what's going on here. By this point, wouldn't the situation kind of warrant it? Asked Raindrops.
No. Problem is, all we have at this point is our word of what we've seen, which, while Princess Luna might listen to, the Night Court itself operates on the need for solid evidence to investigate a proper investigation, like proven fake permits, which is what caused a formal investigation last year. I don't doubt the permits are real this time, given the copper coins themselves are behind this affair. What we need is a stamped documentation, which Shiny probably is too smart to leave behind, or a record of the animals they're keeping captive. A lizard of illicit payments would be nice too. Either way, I'll find something while looking for Sawdust.
Be careful around him, Raindrops said. Something about that pony really sets off warning signals in me. A deep frown crossed Raindrop's features, and then, as he leaned towards Trixie. So, I noticed this plan so far just involves you doing something incredibly dangerous sneaking about. What about me and Cheerilee?
Shining is trying to capture his sister, so, logically, we capture her first. We have a leg up on him.
Trixie, putting her forehead on the table, leveraging herself up, looking far more energetic now that she had some food and a bit of drink to get her mind lubricated.
Since we can't guarantee where she and her basilisk will strike, I want to make sure Oaton is safe. So, Cheerilee, I want you to go to the lumber camp and try to talk to Shiny again. See if you can convince him to work with us in canting Tarnist. I don't think he'll go for it. He doesn't trust you, Trixie. I know, but it isn't important if he agrees or not. Just that you're there at the lumber camp, and you at least get Shiny to let you stay there for the night.
Cheerilee's eyebrows shot up, and Trixie blushed and coughed.
Ahem! Not like that! I just mean you need to be there, and Tarnist needs to know you're there. That way, she'll all but guarantee to attack the place, and not here at Oaton. I figured you'll best know how to get Shiny to let you stay. Why not tell him that me and Raindrops agreed to return to Ponyville if we let you stay to handle things?
He might buy that. Aren't we just taking the danger to Oaton, though, and shoving it onto the Lumber Guild? Most of those ponies are just doing a job, after all.
I know, but I'm betting on Raindrops on that count,
said Trixie. So, we get to my part in all this, said Raindrops, looking eager. What's my play?
Whether or not I found the evidence I'm looking for, when the basilisk attacks, I'm going to need to head for that area and use my magic sight to track Tarnist's control spell. When I found her location, I'll contact you with the earpiece.
She tapped her hoof on the silver clasp on her ear.
You'll already be in the air by that point. Just use a cloud to hide yourself until the right time. Then drop on Tarnist and do what you do best. Just knock her out. That should break her control on that basilisk. Then I can take control.
You? Trixie nodded.
I got a pretty good look at the spell. It's high-level enchantment. Might be difficult. I'm going to spend a lot of today practicing it, but I'm certain I can duplicate the spell. Once I take control of the basilisk, I can send it back to the forest. We'll have Tarnist, and then we can start negotiating with Shining for his family leaving Oaton alone in exchange for his sister. Sound like a plan?
Her two friends exchanged glances before Cheerilee said,
I've heard worse. A lot of things could go wrong with it. But as any military history text will say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. I believe that was what General Skybreaker from the Pegasi Unicorn tribal conflict of 108 BE.
At the look from her friends, Cheerilee chuckled.
What? I'm a school teacher. Equestria doesn't have much military history, true. But the before Equestria era had a lot of conflicts of great interest, especially conflicts between Pegasi and unicorns, who fight for a lot of control of mountain territory now under the Griffin Kingdoms. Though, back in that time period, the economic dynamics between the tribes created an almost tradition of skirmish warfare to settle trade disputes, especially with King Grover. Cheerilee, another time, please. Fine, Trixie. But an uneducated mind is an unfulfilled one,
said Cheerilee, flanking a hoof at her. A cough next to them drew their three's attention to Mayor Sheath, who had returned. Trixie noted the tavern had emptied, and though the windows could see a crowd of the gathered Oaton ponies, she felt an odd thrill and fear amongst the familiar stage jitters. She was used to crowds. When she served, she could deliver them a performance they enjoy, and their attention on her would be all positive. There was no guarantee at all if the pony folk of Oaton were going to enjoy the next act she had in store, merely because it wasn't going to be an act. Every pony is gathered, Miss Trixie, said Chief. Ready when you are. Trixie looked at the door, eyes a little wide, until she felt a hoof on one shoulder, and a wingtip on the other. Cheerilee was giving her a tearful smile, and Raindrops was a slightly inclined nod of encouragement. Trixie took a deep breath, adjusted her hat, and stood, beginning a slow walk to the door, her friends by her side.
I'm ready. Let's all go tell the ponies the truth.